Okay, so this video is on section 3.1. To calculate the mean, it's basically calculating the average. You add all of your data values up and divide by the total number of values you have. But to save time for on the homework, you can use StatCrunch. So you open in StatCrunch, and you go to Stat, and then you go to Summary Stats column. Click on variable 1, and then you can select everything. The main information we'll be using is mean, median, mode, standard deviation, but StatCrunch will calculate basically anything. But keep in mind, on your test, you will have to calculate these without StatCrunch. Of course, you will not have very many numbers to calculate since you won't have StatCrunch. So I'm going to go back to my homework. As you see, the mean is 12.888. You can round that 3 decimal places, so it would be 12.889. Okay, and then to get the median, you basically put the numbers in order and find the middle number. If you happen to have two numbers in the middle, if you have an even number of data values, you take the two middle numbers and get the average of those two numbers, add them up and divide by 2. But like I said, you can use StatCrunch to calculate all of this. So let's see what our median is 16. So that means our middle number is 16. If you were to put these numbers in order, you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 numbers. If you have an odd amount of numbers, you will always have a middle number, which would be the median. Okay, for the mode, this is the number that occurs the most, that repeats. You can have more than one mode. Let's say your number repeats 3 times and you also have another number that repeats 3 times. Well, you can have more than one mode. You can also have no mode. And for R value, you can look and see the mode is 20. Let's look at that. 20 is the only number that repeats. So the mode is 20. Okay, describe the shape of the distribution. Let's look back up. If the mean is greater than the median, it would be to the right of the median, so it would be right skewed, because remember your median is your middle number. If the mean is somewhat smaller than the median, then you will have a left skewed. So here our mean is much smaller than our median. So the mean is less than the median. So the shape is left skewed. Okay, moving on. I want to kind of skip around because a lot of these are the same. So I want to get to a question that's somewhat different. So you're doing the same thing on these. And actually these you could do by hand. They would not take long at all. The mean, add up these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers, add them up, divide by 7 to get your mean. Median, put these numbers in order, find your middle number. Mode is the number that occurs the most. And as you see, I don't believe we have a mode here, so none. And then you would describe the shape of the distribution. Remember, if the mean is greater than the median, then the mean would be to the right of the median. So it'd be right skewed. Think of your graph. Okay, where are the numbers bigger at? On the right side. Okay. If your mean is less than your median, where are the numbers smaller? On the left side of a graph. So on the left side of your number line, so it would be smaller, it would be left skewed. So all of these are basically a repetition. Number 4 is the same. Number 5 is the same. You have more numbers, of course. Number 6 is the same. Okay, let's look at number 7. This is basically where you have laptops and a frequency. So what this is telling me is that I have 14 occasions or 14 days where there were 0 laptops. Okay, so basically this is kind of telling you that 0 you would write it 14 times. Alright, you had on 9 days you had 1 laptop, okay, that was sold. So basically you would write the number 1 9 times. You would write 2 10 times. But to save time, instead of writing that number 14 times, you would times it by 14 and add all of these together. So you're going to multiply these occasions and add them all up. Now, what would you divide those by? Well, how many numbers do you have? Well, you have 14 zeros, 9 ones. So you'd have to add all of these numbers up to see how many values you have. So 23, 33, 46, 47. You have 50 numbers. But this is a quick way to write 50 numbers. So you would multiply these, get you a total, and divide by the number 50. Of course, you can do this in StatCrunch. And it took me a minute to find where to do this, but I believe I found it. In Summary Stats Grouped Bin Data. So select your variable. You want the number of laptops, but you want to count in the frequency. Okay, so your bins are actually in your laptops. That's your information. We're going to count these in frequency. And then you can select everything if you want to, just to see. And let's compute. So the mean is 1.74. So how I was explaining to find that by hand, you can actually view an example and it will lead you through it. So remember, it asks for the average. It doesn't say mean, but that is the same thing. So the mean was what, 1.74? So we will check that. And so you calculate it. This is called the weighted mean. You will calculate it in a similar way. Let me go back. Okay, all right, and then that's all you do on this. I just wanted to show you that calculation. Okay, on number 8, same. It's going back to the same thing we were doing before. I believe number 7 is the only one that's a little different. Number 9, it is the same thing, okay? But I do want to say this, when you're comparing the mean and the median, okay? Now, most of the time, either one of these is a good indicator of the data, but let's just say if there are outliers, meaning there are numbers that stand out, and I worked one where there were outliers. Let me see if I can find it. I believe this one was the one that had outliers, meaning that, most of the numbers are close in range, but you have a few numbers that are extreme, that are way out of the area of the range. Look, 4.3, 8.6, all these are pretty close, but then you have numbers like 62.9. That is really going to mess up your average. Think about if you took a test and most of your grades were A's and B's, and then you made a 10 on a test. Does that really represent you as a student if for the most part you make A's and B's? Is that average going to really represent you? If you make a 10 on one test and you have 3 A's and a B, the 10 is going to hurt your average, and it's going to show that you're probably not as good of a student as you really are, because that 10 is an outlier. So here, your average does not really show a true representation of the data. So if this happens, the median would probably be a better representation of the data. So I chose here because which of these three measurements would be best to describe the central tendency of the data? Because we have outliers, the median would be the better choice. And this is pretty much all there is in section 3.1.